Hi, welcome back. Today I will be reviewing a young adult horror novel entitled Malignant Summer by indie author Tim Myers. And I was really excited to read this book because it kind of reminded me of It by Stephen King, where you have these young adolescents who have banded together to stop Pennywise from attacking their town. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be because I end up finding so many issues with this book that kind of turned me away from liking it. It really had potential, but as I said, there were just so many things that worked together to keep me from liking it. So before I go on about what I did not like about the book, let me let you know what the book was about. So in Malignant Summer, we meet three teenagers by the name of Doug, Jesse, and Grady, and today is the last day of the 8th grade. And tonight they plan on spending it involved in a scavenger hunt run by the seniors at the neighboring high school. Of course, the scavenger hunt is not meant for 8th graders, but luckily this year, Jesse's older brother has allowed him and his friends to tag along with Jesse's older brother and his girlfriend. As they make their way through the town, the clues prove to be kind of simple, and they're kind of frustrated that it's as easy as it is because it's supposed to be this world-renowned scavenger hunt that takes place each year. But unfortunately, when they make their way to the last spot at the cemetery, it doesn't prove to be as simple as it has been throughout the night. And they decide to separate and go off looking for the clues on their own. And this is where things starts to get a little crazy. They start seeing things that shouldn't be there. They see this woman floating in the cemetery and she's wearing these tattered clothes, but you can see her nakedness beneath the clothes, and there's this scar running down her belly and her innards are hanging out. And also while they're there, Doug, Jesse, and Grady see this young guy from the town, the one that was involved in putting the scavenger hunt together, and his body is kind of elongated and doesn't look human-like, and there's this black substance coming from his nose. And the guy is able to overtake them, and he spews this black substance inside of Jesse's mouth. Unfortunately, at this time, their friend Grady takes off, leaving them by themselves, and Doug is eventually able to overpower this guy and get him off his friend. But of course, that's not before he's ingested this black substance inside his body. But they are able to get away from the cemetery, and they go home and go their separate ways. But of course, they're not able to forget what happened at the cemetery. And they eventually spend the rest of their summer researching what's going on in their town, because as the summer goes on, a lot of the kids in the town have become sick. They've got leukemia, they've got cancers, and they're not responding to their treatment, and they are dying. And Doug, Jesse, and Grady believes that this has something to do with the woman that they saw in the cemetery, not only because of the events that happened that night, because also they are having these dreams, and the woman is in their dreams, and she's showing them what their town is going to become. It's going to be overrun with this vegetation, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be sinister. And they have decided that they are not going to allow this to happen, that they have to put an end to whatever is happening to their town. One of my biggest issues with this book was the overly done, overly excessive descriptions. This book was 600 pages, and if the author had just whittled down this excessive description, the book could have easily been around 400 pages, and it wouldn't have taken me a month and a half to finish reading it. There were times where the author was actually explaining the descriptions, and I don't really get that. Do you not think as readers that we're not smart enough to get that? There were sections of the story that were placed in italics to let the reader know that this is a dream sequence, and the author goes on to explain at times where the character is not allowed to do things because I'm in a dream. I can't do this because the dream won't let me do this. And you don't have to tell the reader that. We get it. We know that it's a dream. We know that this is a dream that this entity has created, and she's running things in this dream sequence. She's the mother of the dream. She controls things. You don't have to tell us that this character can't do things because the dream is not allowing the character to do this. It's the reason why you put it in italics. We get it. We're smart. As readers, we get it. You do not have to reiterate things for us. You do not have to tell us what is happening. We understand. Another issue that I had with the story was how it kept jumping third person narrator. At first, of course, we start off with third person where the narrator is telling us what's happening from each character's perspective. However, there were times when we're in one character's perspective and the narrator knows what's going on with the other characters. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe there are two types of editors that are editing these books. Maybe you just give your book to someone who's just going to tell you about the grammatical mistakes, and they're not going to point out things to you that need to be changed. They're not going to tell you, hey, cut this out. The reader gets it. Or, hey, you changed perspectives here. We're not allowed to know what's going on inside this other character's head. As an editor myself, I wouldn't be able to just let you know that there are grammatical mistakes in the story. I, as a person, could not ignore those instances. For instance, one of my biggest pet peeves is inconsistencies. And there's one part in the story where the characters are in the cemetery and the sky is covered with these overcast of gray clouds where the storm is supposedly rolling in. So we have this gray, cloudy, overcast night, correct? Which means it makes it kind of hard to see in the cemetery at night. Well, one of the characters has a flashlight and the flashlight is giving out on him and he's shaking the flashlight and it's not working. So he decides, well, I guess I'm going to have to rely on the moon and the stars to continue to guide me. How is that possible? How are you going to rely on the moon and stars to guide you when you've already said that the sky is covered with gray clouds? I'm sure some of this can be attributed to where an author left off from his story and started back up again. However, do authors not read their own books? Do you just write the book and then send it off to an editor and hope that they find these mistakes for you? So another one of my pet peeves is when authors write series and they go back and tell you what happened in the last story. I hate that. I don't understand why they do that, because my thought is, if you want to know what happened in the last book, then go back and read it. Well, in this story, within the last 100 pages, the author goes back and starts telling you what happened in the story already. There's one part of the story where we're told that one of the characters left the town when she was younger and she came back and changed her name. And the author says Rita Boxberger, who left the town and came back and changed her name, is doing so-and-so. And I'm like, yeah, I know you told me that in chapter so-and-so. And there's this other scene where one of the characters finds himself back at the warehouse that has been shut down where he worked at for most of his life. And he's remembering this scene where him and his boss are kind of getting into it. And he says, oh yeah, I remember standing in this same spot just a few weeks ago where I'm going off on my boss and I'm basically telling him where he can go. And I'm like, yeah, I was there. You don't have to tell me that again. I don't understand that. It's like, where's your editor in all this? In the back of the book, it says that they had several eyes look over this book and nobody pointed that out to you, or did you just not care? And my biggest issue with this book is centered around 14-year-olds. So to me, that means that it is a young adult novel. However, there is this scene where one of the characters, Jesse, who's 14 years old, is within this dream sequence and he is encountering Mother, the entity that is trying to destroy their world. And Mother presents herself to Jesse naked. She's naked, even though she's got these bugs crawling through her hair. He finds her repulsive. However, he also becomes aroused by her. And at first, I kind of let that part slide. It's a 14-year-old. They have their urges, correct? However, Mother begins to get closer to Jesse, and eventually she reaches down and she cups his genitals. And I'm thinking, why is this necessary in a young adult novel? Why is this necessary to the story? Why put that in there? To me, I don't care if it's an entity or not. It's this grown woman cupping a 14-year-old genitals, and that should have no place in a story. In fact, if they cut that whole scene out of the story, it would not have made a difference. It was not pertinent to the story that the author was telling. And I found it a bit offensive. And because it has so many issues with this story, I end up giving it 2 stars because, as I said, there was some promise in this story. I like how the author went through the story and created these different scenes, how we were able to see how Mother was taking over the town and how certain parts of the town was taken over and other parts were left untouched, even though it's not really explained in the story why that is. But I like seeing this town, how it was changing, how Mother was taking over, how she was running through the town and making it into something that was hers. There was a lot of promise in this story. It was just so many issues that could have been taken care of had it been given to the right editor. So that concludes today's review. Thank you guys again for sticking around. Until next time, again, take care, stay safe, and try to do something nice for a stranger so we can all do our part to try to make this world a better place.